The dark side of famous landmarks. Famous landmarks are beacons of human achievement, historical relevance, and cultural significance. They draw millions of tourists every year, serve as symbols of national pride, and stand as testaments to architectural grandeur. Yet many of these iconic structures have darker stories hidden behind their majestic facades. These stories are often steeped in human suffering, political intrigue, or environmental damage. This article uncovers the often overlooked sinister histories of some of the world's most famous landmarks, offering a different perspective on their global fame. 1. The Great Wall of China, a monument built on human suffering. The Great Wall of China, stretching over 13,000 miles, is an engineering marvel and a symbol of China's historic might. Yet the wall's construction came at an immense human cost. The wall was built by various Chinese dynasties over the centuries, primarily as a defense against invasions from the north, particularly by the Mongols. But its grandeur hides a brutal history of forced labor, death, and oppression. During the Qin dynasty, 221–206 BC, Emperor Qin Shi Huang ordered the construction of large sections of the wall to protect his newly unified empire. This was no small task, and the labor force consisted largely of peasants, prisoners, and soldiers. These workers endured grueling conditions, working in extreme heat and freezing cold, with inadequate food and shelter. The mortality rate was staggering. Hundreds of thousands of laborers died during the wall's construction. So many bodies were buried within the wall's structure that it earned the grim nickname, the longest cemetery in the world. Beyond its immediate human toll, the Great Wall also represents a legacy of oppression by China's emperors. It was a project that epitomized the heavy-handed rule of tyrants who prioritized territorial defense over the well-being of their people. 2. The Eiffel Tower, a structure hated and nearly destroyed. Today, the Eiffel Tower is synonymous with romance and Parisian beauty. But when it was first constructed for the 1889 World's Fair, the tower was reviled by many Parisians. Some of the most prominent artists and intellectuals of the time, including authors like Guy de Maupassant and painters like Alexandre Dumas, famously protested the monstrosity being erected in their beloved city. A group of 47 artists and intellectuals signed a petition published in Le Temps, denouncing the tower as a useless and monstrous structure that would disfigure Paris. They claimed it was an eyesore that represented the worst excesses of industrial modernity, and feared it would overshadow the city's classical architectural beauty. In the decades following its construction, the Eiffel Tower was nearly torn down multiple times. It was only saved by its usefulness as a radio transmission tower. During World War II, the tower faced another close call when Adolf Hitler ordered it destroyed. Thankfully, the command was never carried out, and the Eiffel Tower remains standing today. But its history as a symbol of modernization was not always viewed positively by the people it was meant to represent. 3. The Colosseum, a spectacle of death and exploitation. The Roman Colosseum, a symbol of ancient Rome's power and grandeur, was the stage for some of the most brutal displays of violence in human history. Built between 70–80 AD under Emperor Vespasian and his son Titus, this massive amphitheater could hold up to 50,000 spectators, who would gather to watch gladiatorial combat, animal hunts, and executions. The Colosseum's dark history is steeped in death, both of humans and animals. Gladiators, many of whom were slaves, prisoners of war, or criminals, were forced to fight each other or wild animals, often to the death. The games were a way for Roman emperors to keep the populace entertained and distracted from the political issues of the day, all while projecting an image of strength and dominance. Thousands of animals were slaughtered in the Colosseum's games, leading to the near extinction of several species in the regions surrounding the Roman Empire. Lions, bears, elephants, and even crocodiles were imported from Africa and the Middle East to be killed in the arena. The sheer scale of the slaughter was staggering. Some estimates suggest that over the centuries, hundreds of thousands of humans and animals died in the Colosseum. While the Colosseum is now a tourist attraction, its history as a place of death and suffering should not be forgotten. It was a site where human life was trivialized for the sake of spectacle, where cruelty was put on display for the enjoyment of the masses. 4. The Pyramids of Giza, a legacy of oppression and exploitation. The Pyramids of Giza, among the most iconic landmarks in the world, have long fascinated historians, archaeologists, and tourists alike. These ancient structures, built as tombs for the pharaohs during Egypt's Old Kingdom period, circa 2580 to 2560 BC, are marvels of engineering that have stood for thousands of years. However, their construction is often associated with tales of immense human suffering. For centuries, it was believed that the pyramids were built by slave labor, with workers being subjected to brutal conditions. While more recent archaeological evidence suggests that the labor force consisted largely of paid workers, this does not entirely absolve the project of its dark legacy. These workers were subjected to grueling conditions, working long hours in the scorching desert heat. Injuries and deaths were common, and the project itself was a reflection of the immense social stratification in ancient Egypt, where the lives of laborers were considered disposable compared to the divine status of the pharaohs. The pyramids also represent the immense wealth disparity of the time. While the pharaohs spent vast resources building monumental tombs for themselves, the majority of Egypt's population lived in poverty, with little access to the wealth and privilege enjoyed by the elite. 5. The Taj Mahal. Beauty built on tragedy and labor exploitation. The Taj Mahal, often hailed as one of the most beautiful buildings in the world, is a monument to love. It was commissioned by the Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan in 1632 as a mausoleum for his beloved wife, Mumtaz Mahal, who died during childbirth. While the story behind the Taj Mahal is often romanticized, its construction reveals a darker side of exploitation and loss. The Taj Mahal was built by a workforce of over 20,000 laborers, who toiled for more than 20 years to complete the structure. These workers included skilled artisans, stonemasons, and laborers who were subjected to harsh working conditions. Many suffered injuries, and some even lost their lives during the construction. In addition, the massive cost of the project drained the empire's coffers, contributing to economic instability in the later years of Shah Jahan's reign. There are also stories of cruelty associated with the project. According to legend, Shah Jahan ordered that the hands of the artisans who worked on the Taj Mahal be amputated so they could never replicate its beauty elsewhere. While this story is likely apocryphal, it highlights the stark contrast between the monument's serene beauty and the suffering endured by those who built it. 6. Mount Rushmore. A controversial monument on stolen land. Mount Rushmore, featuring the carved faces of 4 U.S. presidents, is one of the most iconic landmarks in America. Located in the Black Hills of South Dakota, it is visited by millions of people each year. However, the site is steeped in controversy and a dark history of dispossession and broken promises. The Black Hills are sacred to the Lakota Sioux, who inhabited the region long before the arrival of European settlers. In the 1868 Treaty of Fort Laramie, the U.S. government promised the Lakota that the Black Hills would remain under their control. However, after gold was discovered in the area, the U.S. government violated the treaty and seized the land. The construction of Mount Rushmore, which began in 1927, further compounded the injustice by carving the faces of American leaders into a sacred mountain without the consent of the Lakota people. Adding to the controversy is the fact that the monument was designed by Gutzon Borglum, an artist with ties to the Ku Klux Klan. Borglum had previously worked on the Confederate Memorial at Stone Mountain, Georgia, and his association with white supremacist ideology casts a shadow over Mount Rushmore's legacy. For many Native Americans, Mount Rushmore is a painful reminder of the U.S. government's betrayal and the ongoing struggle for recognition of indigenous rights. The site continues to be a focal point for protests and calls for the Black Hills to be returned to the Lakota people. 7. The Berlin Wall. A symbol of oppression and division. The Berlin Wall, which stood from 1961 to 1989, is one of the most infamous symbols of the Cold War. Erected by the communist government of East Germany, the wall was intended to prevent East Berliners from fleeing to West Berlin and, by extension, to the democratic West. While the wall was officially described as an anti-fascist protection rampart, its real purpose was to imprison the population of East Germany within the confines of a repressive regime. The wall's construction divided families and cut off East Berliners from their jobs, friends, and lives in the West. The East German government enforced the division with deadly force, Border guards were ordered to shoot anyone who attempted to escape. Hundreds of people were killed trying to cross the wall, their deaths serving as a grim reminder of the regime's iron grip on its citizens. The Berlin Wall was not just a physical barrier. It was a symbol of the oppression, censorship, and surveillance that defined